Hi. I guess most of you probably don't remember me. My name is Amanda. I made a video called Aspergers and Me. I was 22 years old when I made that first video. I am now 26. And I have to say, growing up with Asperger's can be a challenge, but not always. You see, people with Asperger's really aren't that much different than anybody else. I mean, the only real difference is that our brains are wired a little differently than most people's. I mean, take me for example. I'm not like most 26-year-olds at all. For starters, I have a very childlike personality. I like toys. I like dolls. And I enjoy the same things that children do. I enjoy going to, children's shows at the movies. Like, the last movie I went to see was, Wreck-It Ralph, which was a kiddie movie. I really enjoy Disney movies, especially. I also really like fairy tales. I'm really into the world of fantasy. I don't think that's an Asperger's thing. I think that's just who I am. But that's just it. Having Asperger's has made me who I am. Sometimes I wonder, though, would I be any different if I didn't have Asperger's? Would I still be childlike? Would I still like the things I like today? It's a question I ask myself sometimes. I don't know a lot of people with Asperger's. I've met very, very few. But I do know this. I do know that people with Asperger's and autism and things like that, we really aren't that different from anybody else. Sure, I mean, we have certain issues sometimes, but not always. Most of the times we're just perfectly normal people who lead perfectly normal lives. It's kind of hard to explain sometimes. I was 17 years old when I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. And I was a little scared at first because I didn't know what it was. Then after doing some research, I realized that it's not really a disease or a mental disorder, really. It's kind of hard to explain. It's not a birth defect, really. But it is something that not very well known. When they discovered that I had Asperger's syndrome was still pretty new. No one really knew much about it. Autism was a lot more known than Asperger's. Asperger's is nothing really like autism. Autism is a whole different ballgame combined with Asperger's. People with Asperger's are a little more high functioning, and like people with autism, they're super smart. Because I know I've met a lot of autistic people, and they are brains. I mean, I've never met an autistic person who isn't, like, a genius. A lot of autistic people are really, really, really smart. But it's not the autism that makes them smart. It's just part of who they are. I've met autistic people before, and it just amazes me at how well they get along in the world. I mean, people think that just because we're autistic or have Asperger's, or even people with other disorders like Down syndrome or cerebral palsy, or people who are deaf or blind or mute, people with physical or mental disorders like bipolar disorder or depression or schizophrenia or anything like that. We can't help how we are. Sometimes physical and other times mental disabilities can be treated with medications and therapy and things like that. Not Asperger's, though. Asperger's syndrome really can't be treated with medication, at least not in my case. Every time I was put on a medication, it usually backfired on me. It would have the opposite effect on me. Like, if I took something that was like, say, an antidepressant, instead of making me happy, it just made me even more unhappy. And something that was like a mood stabilizer, something that would make me less angry, made me more angry. The truth is, with me, in my particular case, I cannot take medication because taking medication doesn't work. I realize that Asperger's isn't something that I have to try to get rid of. It's just something I have to live with the rest of my life, which is okay. I can handle it. Having Asperger's is really just, like I said before, it's made me who I am. Even though I'm not like most 26-year-old women, I mean, take a look at my room. It's got things in it that mostly a little girl would want, or things a teenager would want. I mean, I have dolls, I have toys, I have a lot of things that I treasure in this very room. My parents never really understood why I always acted the way I did when I was a little girl. Growing up, I had some issues. But they say that people with Asperger's, some of the symptoms that we're born with start to grow out of us as we mature. And I guess most of the symptoms that I had grew out of me as I grew older. Sometimes I wonder if some of the symptoms that I might still have will affect me in any way as I grow up. I mean, I pretty much am grown up now, but I'm more grown up physically than I am mentally. I mean, how many 26-year-olds do you know who like Disney characters and read fairy tale books and like playing with dolls? Probably not very many. Sometimes I wonder why I was born this way. But I have to say, being born with Asperger's was more of a blessing than a curse. I mean, most parents nowadays, they find out that their kid has Asperger's and they don't know what to do because they don't know anything about it. But there's not that much to understand, really. Asperger's is just something, it's just something you have to live with. It's not something that can be controlled with therapy or medication or anything like that. You just gotta learn to adapt. You've gotta learn to accept the person, and you have to realize that their brain is wired a little differently than most. I've accepted who I am, and although I may be a little strange to most people, I've never let the fact that I have Asperger's syndrome hold me down. And I don't use it as a crutch to make people feel sorry for me. I don't want people's pity. And I don't want people to think that, oh, poor thing, she has Asperger's syndrome. No. I don't want people feeling sorry for me. I just want people to accept me as I am. I mean, being accepted is pretty much what I'm all about.